Release That Witch. Episode 41. First Sighting. Just as Brian had said, once the snow began in Border Town, it did not stop. Overnight, the town wrapped itself in a white veil. By morning, the snowfall had thinned. Only a few stray flakes drifted down now and then, but the sky stayed grey. At the thought that he would not see the sun for months, Roland found the whole thing hard to credit.
It defied all common sense. Then again, looking for common sense in a world where witches held magic was itself rather odd. But how did the demonic beasts affect the very skies? A pity he had no weather satellite to show him the cloud map of the world.
The town has grown much quieter. A good number of folk followed the nobles when they evacuated.
Just as well. At least they won't be a drag on us. I have arranged for Barov to run a census this winter.
A what?
Going door to door, counting. How many stayed, how many mouths in each household, their names, their trades, all of it written down. That way, whether we are assigning manpower in wartime or paying out pensions afterward, everything can be done quickly and properly.
Manpower? Your Highness, you truly are not the man you used to be.
Oh?
The old you would also say things I couldn't understand and do inexplicable things, but they were always things unworthy of a prince. Whereas now, those strange training regulations of yours, the curious devices from the alchemy workshops, the results have been uncannily effective. Perhaps it is, as my grandfather said, an extraordinary man is extraordinary because he always sees what ordinary men overlook. I have a feeling you might truly become the next king.
Is that so? A warmth suddenly welled up in Roland's chest. What in this world brings more fulfillment than being recognized by your own men after the struggle? For a moment, his limbs felt full of strength, and even the grey sky seemed less hateful.
Climbing the wall, they found the militia clearing snow from the walkway. At the prince's appearance, the men all bowed.
I should teach them the military salute. How was last night?
No sign of demonic beasts, Your Highness. By past experience, after the first snow, we have a stretch of relative calm. The beasts are few in this period, and those turned are mostly small, weak animals.
Then keep the watch as is.
The area behind the wall had been converted into barracks. When no alarm horn sounded, most men rested in camp to save their strength. The watch ran on rotations. Given the winter cold, each squad stood only 2 hours of patrol before being relieved. Roland had laid down every one of these measures himself. He had asked Brian how Longsong Stronghold managed its defense, and learned they had no system at all. The unluckiest new recruits were sent to watch for beast movement, sitting on the wall a whole day at a stretch. Skiving and desertion were common. Over one winter, 20 or 30 men might hang for dereliction or disobedience.
As for when beasts were actually sighted pure chaos, no sectors divided, no responsibility assigned to anyone. Thinking of this era's level of warfare, Roland understood. An age that worshipped personal valor, honor, and plunder, where even knights would charge off alone when their blood ran hot. Best not to ask too much.
Walking the length of the wall, all seemed to be going smoothly. But Roland discovered a problem he had overlooked: the guiding barriers. The obstacles still clearly channeled the beasts toward the middle of the wall, but if Brian was right, 2 or 3 months of snow would bury them all. When that happened, any point along 600 meters of wall could become the beast's path, and his men could never watch it all.
Sending men down to clear the snow was out of the question. A few of the nimble wolf kinds would be enough to butcher such a party. Perhaps he would have to rely on the witch's power after all. Nightingale could sneak Anna out of the town to melt the drifts with great fires, then sneak back just as she had smuggled Nanava out of the pine house.
Look, up ahead.
The observation post on the wall's left side cried out. Roland and Carter looked where he pointed. A small, dark shape had crawled out of the snowfield and was slowly dragging itself toward the wall.
Your Highness, shall we?
As we drilled, you judge for yourself whether to sound the horn. On this, you have more experience than I.
The hunter, in charge of that section, hesitated, but in the end only drew his crossbow string and stood at the wall's edge, watching. Roland nodded in satisfaction. So far, Order on the wall held. The question was whether they could still organize a defense by the book when the beasts came in numbers. The black shape drew closer. When it came within 50 meters of the wall, Roland could make out the beast's features. Some manner of fox variant, perhaps. Its fur was grey-black, its eyes blood-red. Panting white breath, it reached the foot of the wall.
This one looks freshly corrupted. Not much of a threat?
As he spoke, Iron Axe drew his bow and took aim.
You said they are infected by the breath of hell and driven west to here?
Not only west. When the gates of hell open in the wildlands, everywhere not blocked by the impassable mountains suffers the beast's assault. The Great Gap to the north especially, there the mountains are cut off clean and the breach runs more than 10 miles. That is the beast's main avenue of attack.
The frenzied monster prowled back and forth at the wall's foot for a while, then raised its head, bared its teeth, and growled up at the men above. Just as it gathered itself to leap, Iron Axe loosed his string. A sharp arrow pierced clean through the beast's neck and nailed it fast to the ground. Roland noticed that the blood it bled was black.
Why is it that, corrupted by the same demonic power, witches awaken with their minds intact, while beasts go mad and their bodies twist into new shapes? If the chance ever comes, I must see for myself what lies behind the impassable mountains. In the prince's own memories, that was forbidden ground. No man could tread the place where the gates of hell opened. But since no one had ever been there, the tales were all guesswork from ancient books, impossible to verify and of doubtful truth.
Release That Witch. Episode 42. A Workplace Accident.
What happens if a demonic beast bites you? Do you become like them? Please don't let this be some otherworldly version of Resident Evil, he thought. This era's technology had no way to extract a virus antigen.
Of course not. Bitten. You simply become a corpse.
Iron Axe wore a look that said, plainly, why would you even ask such a thing?
And their meat? Is it edible?
Your Highness! How could such foul things be eaten? They are tainted by the breath of hell itself.
Roland looked to Iron Axe, who nodded.
Your knight speaks truly. I once cut meat from a beast and fed it to a hunting hound. The hound died very quickly after eating it.
Is that so? What a pity, Roland sighed inwardly. Food sources were so scarce in this era, if demonic beasts were edible, winter would be a harvest season. Think of it, the whole forest's animals running madly toward border town of their own accord. You wouldn't even need hunting tools.
Finishing his inspection of the wall, Roland decided to pay Nanawa a visit. The noble residence nearest the wall had been requisitioned by him as a field hospital to the outside world, a medical house. Just in case, it was now the most tightly guarded place in town, after the wall itself. The house's owner, on returning to Longsong Stronghold, had taken every possession that could be carried. And since Border Town itself counted as a place that could be abandoned at any time, the residence, though large, held not a single mural, carpet, or piece of porcelain. Were it not kept reasonably clean, it would have seemed an ownerless house, long vacant. Roland had knocked through every wooden partition on the ground floor, joining all the rooms, save the corridor and entrance hall, into one, and set out 10 beds. A simple hospital, complete. There were no nurses and no doctors, and indeed, the 10 beds would likely never all be used at once. Nanawa's healing required no bed rest. It took effect at once. By day, she stood by on the hospital's second floor, and Anna came to keep her company when free. Tigu Pine and Brian held the first floor, with 2 personal guards posted outside the door. Foolproof, one might say. But what Roland had not expected was this. The field hospital's first patient would come not from the militia guarding the wall, but from the workers of the North Slope mine. Nail felt his own hands trembling. Behind him, Ironhead's screams had already gone hoarse. He quickened his pace again, wishing he could sprout wings.
This is all my fault. Damn it all. How could I forget the knight's warning? I should never have taken the job of running the big fellow.
Ever since the great black machine had been installed at the mine's mouth, the miners' work had grown much lighter. The hardest labor had always been hauling the dug ore out of the tunnels. Once a mine basket filled with stone, it took 3 or 4 men to drag it, 2 pushing from behind, the rest pulling in front. The uneven tunnel floor, worn smooth by years of baskets, still needed the iron strips on the baskets' bottoms replaced often. A week ago, the chief knight had directed Ironhead and his crew to haul a great pile of strangely shaped metal parts up the mountain and spent days assembling them into a furnace. Nail had never imagined that, once this furnace was lit, it could move all by itself. Not only move, it was stronger than any team of men. The knight said it was His Highness's invention. A steam engine, it was called. Tie the hemp rope fast to the mine basket, light the furnace fire, and the big fellow would huff and whir, turning its winch and dragging the basket swiftly out of the tunnel. Simply incredible. After the knight demonstrated it a few times, he told Ironhead to pick a man to run the steam engine. When Nail was chosen, he had been delighted for days. Think of it just standing watch over this machine, and he need never go down the mine to break rock or push baskets again. That cave-in last time had scared him badly. So the knight's instructions Nail had kept firmly in mind. It was not hard, really, to set the big fellow working. Lift the green painted lever, then press down the red one. The knight said the green lever opened the intake valve and the red lever the exhaust, sending steam through the pipe into the cylinder. Once the basket was hauled up, to stop the machine you did the reverse. Lift the red lever, press down the green, and steam would vent from the pipe on the boiler's side. Every cycle, the furnace water had to be refilled. Nail understood none of this talk of valves and cylinders, but he had agreed to it all. 2 points, however, the knight had stressed above all. First, the order must never be wrong. Starting, green first, then red. Stopping, red first, then green. Get it wrong, and the machine could be wrecked. Second, when venting steam, always clear the miners away from the area first, and keep shouting warnings until the red lever is fully raised.
The first rule, I knew cold I could do it blindfolded. The trouble was the second.
Today, shutting the machine down as usual, no one else had been around. Shouting warnings to empty air felt like something a fool would do. So he had ducked his head and gone straight for the red lever. The lever was jammed a little tight, gritting his teeth. He had wrestled with it for a good while before it moved. And in the very instant it gave, Ironhead appeared right in front of the furnace. Nail swore he had never seen where the foreman sprang from, and the machine's great roaring had drowned out his steps. White steam screamed from the vent and struck Ironhead square in the face. Nail froze on the spot in terror. Ironhead fell straight onto his back, hands clamped over his face, rolling this way and that, letting out shrill, wretched screams. The sound made Nail's hair stand on end. Soon other miners crowded around, pinning the thrashing Ironhead down and forcing his hands away. His face was a blurred ruin. Blood seeped from flesh cooked through, and his eyes had become white beads. Everyone there understood Ironhead was beyond saving.
When I came back to myself, the tears burst from my eyes. Ironhead had always looked out for me. Seeing I was young, the work he gave me was always a share lighter than the others, yet my pay was never a copper shot. And now my carelessness had caused all this.
Amid the grief and panic, Nail suddenly recalled the knight's words. If anyone at the mine was hurt, the injured man could be brought near the wall. A new medical house had opened there. Deep down, he knew such grave wounds could not be cured. The burned area was far too large. Herbs would do nothing. It would only rot on, then fever would take the whole body, and soon after, coma. But he still hoisted Ironhead onto his back, ignored the stairs around him, gritted his teeth, and ran for the foot of the mountain.
If I do nothing and just watch Ironhead die, I could never forgive myself. Not as long as I live.
Release That Witch, Episode 43, Staying Strong.
Where's Sister Anna?
Hearing thumping footsteps on the stairs, Nanawa ran to the door and peeked out, only to find, to her disappointment, that the visitor was the prince.
She is still at work. She'll probably come by later.
Work? You mean burning those grey mud powders?
For the moment, Yes.
Nanawa pursed her lips and went back to the table. I have work too, she thought. Standing watch here, healing the people who get hurt defending this town.
What's this? Bored because Anna isn't here?
Roland smiled, drew out a chair, and sat down by the fireplace.
She propped her chin on her hands and answered honestly. It wasn't that she didn't want to heal the injured. It was just too frightening. She still remembered the first time she healed Brian. The man had looked soaked in blood, red-brown clots crusted on his chest, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, spitting pink foam. And then she had fainted. How utterly shameful. Nanawa lifted her head and stole a glance at Roland. He had leaned back in the chair and begun to snore. So even the prince gets tired, she thought. Building the wall, training the soldiers, keeping this town safe from the demonic beasts. That was his work. When he had asked her to come here, she had hesitated a long while, but in the end she had not refused. You will meet things that make you want to live, even if it means struggling to live. Nanawa could not quite understand those words, but when she closed her eyes, Anna's face would rise in her mind, those deep blue eyes, like lake water, slowly wrapping around her. That was why she had said yes to Roland. She wanted to become as strong as Sister Anna.
Footsteps sounded below once more. Nanawa hopped off her chair, meaning to see whether Anna had returned this time, but an invisible hand stopped her.
Wait, there's more than one of them.
You scared me, Nightingale.
Nanawa patted her chest in complaint. The door was quickly pushed open. It was Brian, who held the first floor.
Miss Pine, please come down. Someone has been scalded.
So, it's time to work. I understand.
She took a deep breath and went downstairs. 2 guards were busy lifting a man who cried out without pause onto a bed. Beside them stood a small figure, his face all anxiety. Brian stepped forward and deftly bound the patient's hands and feet to the bed frame. The guards then led the small man out of the room, drawing the curtain that served as a partition shut behind them.
What happened?
Roland came rubbing his eyes down the stairs.
Your Highness, the North Slope mine sent us a gravely wounded man. It looks like a scald of some kind.
A steam scald, from the look of it. Nothing's wrong with the prototype, I hope? Where's the one who brought him? In the entrance hall? I'll go ask what happened. He's all yours here.
With that, Roland walked toward the exit. Nanawa edged slowly to the patient's side and glanced at him from the corner of her eye. The features of his face had melted into one another. Skin that should have been red had gone the pale white of dehydration, hanging off his face in shreds like rags. His neck was covered in blisters the size of bowls. Some had burst, and the seeping fluid, mingled with blood, had soaked a great patch of the pillow. In the wavering firelight, he looked more terrible than the devils of her nightmares. She retreated 2 steps, shut her eyes, and opened them again. Her father was watching her with concern.
Are you all right?
Nanawa nodded, remembering what Roland had told her, just treat the wounded man the way you treat small animals. She walked back to the bedside and stretched out her hands. A wondrous feeling welled up within her, gathering bit by bit into her palms. She saw a thread of liquid glowing pale green flow out from her hands and drip onto the patient's face. Obvious as the glow was, the others seemed blind to it. Then the wounds began to change. The ruined skin flaked away, and new skin grew out before their very eyes. The patient's pained groans gradually ceased. His breathing steadied, as if he had fallen into a deep sleep.
Nanawa let out a breath. This time, I did rather better than last time, didn't I?
Good heavens. So this is the healing power His Highness spoke of my first time seeing it. My good girl, you are truly amazing.
The very power of the gods. When I was wounded, it was Miss Nanawa who came to my aid as well, was it not? Thank you so much.
Ah, you fool. Nanawa covered her face. Doesn't he know it was Nightingale who snuck me out that day?
And when was that? How is it? I know nothing of this.
Ahem. Her power has nothing to do with any gods. It belongs to the witches themselves. Now, how is the patient who was brought in?
Roland pushed the curtain aside and came back in, coughing twice to change the subject.
All but fully healed, as if he had never been hurt at all. Your Highness, with Miss Nanawa's help, everyone stands a chance of surviving the battles of the months of demons.
So long as they don't die on the spot, saving their lives shouldn't be a problem. Wake him, Brian. Your name is Ironhead, is it not?
Am I dreaming?
No, you are alive.
I saw you in the square once. The fourth prince. Your Highness, was it you who saved me?
The man sat up, dazed then, as if suddenly waking, he tumbled off the bed and dropped to his knees.
It was the eldest daughter of House Pine who saved you. She is a witch with the power of healing.
Nanawa's heart clenched. Was it alright to say it so directly? Just like that?
Witch? Your Highness, aren't they devils?
Sure enough, the look in the man's eyes changed.
What rubbish are you spouting? My daughter has nothing to do with devils. She just saved your worthless life. Do you think a devil would lend you a hand?
No. Forgive my rudeness. Thank you for saving my life, Miss Pine.
Ironhead bowed his head deep at once, but Nanawa felt unaccountably miserable. She wanted to rush straight out of the room, yet a voice kept repeating in her heart, "Be strong."
Is this really all right, Your Highness? After this, my daughter may never be able to live a normal life again.
Once Ironhead had been sent away, Tigu asked, worried,
Think of the bright side, Mr. Pine. Only by breaking the deadlock now, in this season, can Nanawa ever win true freedom later. Otherwise, as she grows older, the day will surely come when she is exposed, and then her only choice would be a life cut off from the world.
True freedom? Nanawa did not know. She felt free enough as things were. But if what His Highness said could really come true, then Sister Anna could walk out of the castle just like her and go back to Teacher Carl's academy, right?
Release That Witch. Episode 44, The Hidden Answer. By the time Roland returned to the castle, the day had grown late, and the snow outside was falling harder. He stepped into his bedroom, took off his coat, shook the snow from its collar, and hung it on the rack by the fireplace.
Don't you think you rushed this, Your Highness?
Nightingale appeared before the prince.
You mean Nanawa?
Roland poured a cup of ale for himself and one for her. Though the ale was far more bitter than the beers of his old world, he had slowly grown used to the taste. Nightingale took the cup, held it in her hands, but did not drink. She was waiting for the prince's answer.
There is no better time than now. To bring Nanawa's power into play during the months of demons, her identity as a witch can no longer be hidden. Instantly healing wounds that should be fatal, no common herb or bloodletting can do that. Anyone can work that much out. Thanks to this town, set beyond the western border and dispensable in itself, the church's influence here is limited. Were I them, I would not squander gold royals on a place that can be abandoned at any time either. There isn't even a small chapel in town. The missionaries went back to Longsong Stronghold along with the nobles. So what does Border Town look like right now? An island, cut off from the outside world.
You planned all this long ago?
Yes. The heavy snow will bury the road to Longsong Stronghold, and the shipping at the docks is in my hands. We have at least 3 months to reverse the belief that witches are evil. Propaganda alone achieves very little. Only close contact can dispel the misunderstanding quickly. That was why he had been determined to keep Nanawa, whatever it took. He meant to build an otherworldly Nightingale Florence herself. That legendary nurse's devoted care of the wounded had cut the death rate from 42% to 2%, and the soldiers had named her the Lady with the Lamp. The whole nursing profession rose in esteem until it bordered on worship. And Nanava's ability was more miraculous still, healing wounds through magic. So long as a man did not die on the spot, his life could be clawed back. For the militia's morale, that would likely beat any weapon. And it helped that her father was a fallen noble who dealt daily with hunters and farmers, treated commoners with an even temper, and even allowed Nanava to study at Karl's academy. Any other noble, even the lowest baron, would never let his daughter mix with such people. To them, those folk were the so-called base born.
Can that truly be done?
Even Nightingale, facing a behemoth like the church, seemed unusually powerless.
Without taking this step, you will never know the answer. Roland did not expect everyone in town to change their minds, but the newborn force he was building had to be gripped firmly in his hands. Later, these seeds from within the people themselves would spread his ideas outward. 3 months was enough time to change a great many things.
Why do you go so far for witches?
To liberate the forces of production, to gain greater strength, and a place in the coming royal contest. Of course, those answers were not for this moment. Roland might be a mechanical engineer, but he had also played no small number of romance games. You could call him a veteran of 100 such scenes. 2 lives, more than 20 years each, all warned him. This was a key question, and his answer mattered. Haven't I told you long ago? Border Town does not care about a person's origins. I hope that one day, even witches may live as free people upon my land.
This time, Nightingale's silence lasted long. Only the crackling of the charcoal fire remained in the room. Her profile, lit by the wavering flames, was like a painting of perfect beauty. When she spoke again, Roland had the illusion that time itself had begun to flow once more.
You truly need not go so far. Forgive me, I lied to you before. The Association's sisters have been uprooted and drifting for too long. They dare not hope for much. A place to settle in peace would content them, even if it were only inside this castle.
And how is that any different from a cage? Wait, you mean you're willing to bring them here?
If I do that, you will be making an enemy of the church.
Their hands have already reached too far. The moment the slogan of the divine right of kings is raised, a clash between the church and the kingdoms of the mainland becomes only a matter of time. As for Border Town, get smoothly through these 3 months, and there is little they can do. This place is 1,000 miles from the church's den. Would a bishop march his whole judgment army across the width of Grey Castle to punish me? My father would never allow such a thing. It would be a grave affront to the dignity of the crown.
Nightingale said nothing. When she had curtsied and gone, Roland fell back onto his bed and let out a long breath.
Some things he had left unsaid. The church was 1,000 miles away. At the speed news travelled in this world, they would not react until late spring at the soonest. At the distance. And his own royal standing. And their likeliest move was to send an embassy to ascertain the situation. The round trip alone would take the better part of half a year. And by then, he should already possess the strength to break with them. So, the greatest hidden danger lay not with the church, but with the witches themselves. Only Roland could see this. Witches were at a disadvantage now, but that would not last forever. Witchhood did not pass down through blood. It awakened at random, following no rule at all, which meant witches could never be exterminated. They would only grow in number. With the god punishment stones, the church could still hold its edge over witches, but that edge only countered magic. And from what he had seen so far, awakening granted witches not just manifold powers, their physique, their quickness of thought, even their features were trending beyond the ordinary. In essence, they already counted as a new kind of human. The crueler, the oppression, the fiercer, the resistance. When an uprising led purely by witches finally erupted, how much destruction would it wreak upon Grey Castle? And the hatred bred by the church, once it slipped the leash, could well curdle into an indiscriminate hatred of all the kingdom's people. Roland did not wish to see that happen. So he had to start at Border Town, build a structure that could hold them both, and spread it to all of Grey Castle, even to the whole continent. A world where witches and ordinary people could live side by side.
Release That Witch. Episode 45. Conspiracy, Part 1. As the moon began to sink in the west, Goron Wimbledon saw the outline of the royal capital's walls, looming in and out of the night.
Back at last, after all these months. The weariness of the long road fell away somewhat, but he stayed alert, reined in his mount, and signaled his second to scout ahead. If the plan had not changed, Scholar Aang should have replaced the gate guards with their own men, ready to lower the side gate's bridge once the deputy gave the signal.
He stared hard into the darkness ahead, afraid of missing that faint glow. The wait was not long, yet to Goron, time seemed frozen. When his eyelids ached and were about to give out, he finally saw it, the distant flicker. 2 flashes below the wall, 3 above. Exactly as agreed. He let out a long breath and waved his men forward.
And with that, he was one step from the throne.
Goron rode through the side gate, his deputy beside him. Behind them followed more than 20 riders. No one spoke. All held their reins tight and walked their horses on. The capital's walls were built of stone from Dragonfall Ridge, a grey-brown rock that shone dark red in the torchlight, as if soaked in blood. The wall ran a full 20 feet thick. To raise this peerless rampart, more than 1,000 laborers, slaves, and masons had died upon the works.
A wall of iron that an army of 10,000 could not take, and now I have crossed it without breaking stride. Every breach begins from within. Somehow, he thought of the new holy city, that grander, seemingly impregnable wall. Would it, too, one day be broken from the inside?
Your Highness, I have been waiting for you for a long time.
Beyond the gate, Scholar Aang waited with a small party. Seeing Goron appear, he swung quickly down from his horse and bowed.
Goron cast his stray thoughts aside. Overwrought nerves, most likely. Well done. Have the palace guards been changed as well?
Your Highness, there has been a complication. The Knight Silverhand, who had agreed to serve you, was transferred to the southern region 3 days ago. We have only managed to replace the guards of the royal bedchamber.
Goron frowned. That meant he could not bring all 20-odd men into the palace. The guards would not stop him, but they would never let so many armed men into the royal grounds. So be it. 2 men from the bedchamber squad stay with me. The rest hold the doors and keep any outsider from disturbing me. He hesitated a moment, then made up his mind. The plan had shifted, but the situation remained in hand. His father's personal guards usually spent the night in the outer chamber. So long as someone delayed them a few moments, he was confident he could cut them down.
Entering the inner city, everything seemed just as it had been when he left. Even in the night, he could name every street. This was his ground, of that there was no doubt. The men all dismounted and moved quickly toward the palace. At the gates, the 20-odd riders scattered as newly planned, lying in wait outside. Just as Scholar Aang had promised, though the gate guards wondered why the prince returned to the capital by night, when Goron bluffed that urgent business followed close behind him, they opened the doors and let him pass. After all, he was the king of Grey Castle's eldest son, the lawful first heir. The prince and Scholar Aang crossed the gardens and the great hall. Beyond stood the castle where Wimbledon III resided. The scholar swung his torch left and right. At once, a guardsman stepped out of the dark and dropped to one knee before them.
Your Highness, this way, please.
Goron sniffed the air. He smelled blood.
Hadn't all the bedchamber guards been replaced? By the torchlight, he studied the guardsman. Indeed, a familiar face. A knight in the service of a count who backed his claim. That eased him somewhat. What happened? Did someone get into the castle?
Your Highness, His Majesty received a maid this evening. On her way out, she saw our men changing over. Rest assured, we have taken care of it.
A maid? Father had not touched a woman in a long time, not since mother died. Goron found it strange, but this was no time to fuss over trifles. He nodded, said no more, and followed the guardsmen into the castle, the others filing up behind.
Goron could have walked this castle blindfolded. He had lived here more than 20 years. He knew every secret passage, every hidden door. But tonight's purpose was to persuade his father to pass him the crown. Sneaking into the bedchamber would be meaningless. He had to deal with the personal guards stationed outside, make his father fully grasp his situation, and only then could they sit down and seriously discuss the succession.
And if persuasion failed,
Goron Wimbledon drew a deep breath, raised a hand to halt his men, and drew the two-handed greatsword from his back. At the corridor's end stood the bronze doors, the only entrance to the bedchamber. Behind them lay the outer chamber, the last line of defense, where 2 or 3 personal guards usually stood watch, ready to rush in at the first sign of trouble. Goron first pushed the door open a crack, then slammed in with his shoulder, darted into the room, and raised his sword to meet resistance. But the outer chamber was silent, empty, not a soul, and a thick stench of blood washed over him.
a foreboding flashed through his heart. He ran straight for the bedchamber.
And there, Goron saw a sight he could not believe. Wimbledon III sat against the headboard in his nightrobe, leaning back upon the pillows, the robe fallen open. The hilt of a sword protruded from his chest, and blood ran down his rounded belly, soaking the quilts. And standing beside his father was his own brother, Typheco Wimbledon.
What? How can this be?
The same as you, dear brother. I didn't want to do this either.
He clapped his hands, and a band of iron-armored warriors poured in from behind the doors, surrounding the first prince.
This was a game of chess, brother. I had meant to play it out by the rules. And do you know what? Our third sister never intended to play the game at all. Of course, neither did you. Why else would you ride 1,000 miles to the capital the moment Scholarang read you his prophecy? Honestly, had you not come, I would truly have been at my wit's end.
Scholar.
He ground his teeth and looked back. Scholar Ang retreated a step and spread his hands.
I did not lie to you. The Star of Revelation is drawing away from the blazing sun, which means the wayfarer strays from the proper path. But it can also mean a falling star.
Now Goron understood it all. From the very beginning, he had walked into an exquisite trap. The blood at the castle gate had come from no maid, nor, most likely, was the tale of Silverhand's transfer true. But what crushed him most was this: Scholar Ang, who had looked after him for more than 10 years, who had taught him his letters as a child, had in the end chosen the second prince, just like his father. Typheco Wimbledon, we are both his sons, yet you alone he lavished with everything, the finest lands, all his care. And you were the first to turn and bite him. You are a devil crawled straight out of hell.
Do you truly believe that, dear brother? Had you failed tonight to persuade him to name you heir, did you truly mean to leave it at that? Don't lie to yourself.
Release That Witch, Episode 46, Conspiracy, Part 2. Goron knew there was no road back. The only thing left to him was to drag his own brother down to hell with him. And at this, of all moments, he grew calm instead.
You lured me here just to be rid of me?
Be rid of you? No, dear brother. That would do me no good at all. What I do now, I do from necessity. If I had obediently waited out the 5 years, what awaited me would be our third sister's pirate armada. Do you know what she has been up to lately?
Goron shook his head, inwardly measuring the distance between himself and the second prince. His brother had been clever from childhood, but never good at riding, shooting, or fighting. Given one chance to rush in and swing,
She's building her own army, brother. Truly, I admire her for it. She took that step years before the contest even began, something even I did not foresee. We got along so well as children. Why has it come to this, that we must kill each other? Take you, right now. No doubt, you want nothing more than to cleave me in two with one stroke. I know, brother, you are the same as ever. When you want to kill, your eyes turn terrible. So let me put it plainly. I mean to end the royal contest. Otherwise, 5 years from now, what awaits me is Garcia's fleet. She took control of Clearwater Port years ago. And Golden Harvest City breeds fine merchants, but not warriors. I need an army. One strong enough to stand against our sister's fleet. And no trading city can give me that. Goran Wimbledon. Tomorrow, you will be tried for abandoning your domain without leave and for murdering the king. Tonight, I return to Golden Harvest to be ready before the news of father's tragedy reaches the east. I shall mourn deeply and, as second in line, dutifully accept the crown. And you will mount the executioner's block as a kingslayer.
You!
Goron roared and hurled himself at his brother, but the distance was too great. His greatsword was caught between two iron-armored guards. Then his calf went numb. A short blade had pierced clean through it. Goron lost his balance and toppled. The mob of soldiers piled on, pinned him fast to the floor, and bound him until he could not move a muscle.
Trial? What right have you to try me? I will tell them all of this. Let your supporters know what manner of monster you are.
No, you won't, brother. The alchemy workshops make a drug called tungstil. It is brewed from the venom of southern sand lizards, blended with mare's milk. Drink it, and you will never make another sound. Do not worry, it brings no pain at all. It tastes sweet, even intoxicating. And if you must blame someone, blame our genius little sister. Were it not for her, I would never have taken this step.
He waved to the captain of the guards. The man bowed, hauled the first prince out of the bedchamber, and filed out with the iron-clad warriors, until only the second prince and Scholar Ang remained.
Your Highness, the throne is as good as in your grasp. I suppose I should call you Your Majesty.
Well done. When I sit upon Grey Castle's throne, I will honor our agreement. Though, seeing how miserably my brother ended today, I feel certain agreements could use a clause of guarantee.
Your Highness, what do you mean?
Calm yourself. I simply dislike being betrayed. You have seen these wax pills often enough, I imagine. The shell takes 7 days to dissolve completely about the time I need to travel between the capital and Golden Harvest. I bought your loyalty at the price of the kingdom's chief astrologer. I would hate for someone to buy you back with a higher offer.
The scholar's face went ashen. He gritted his teeth and in the end swallowed the wax pill.
A wise choice. You may go.
Only when the bedchamber stood empty did the second prince's face darken at last. He seized the porcelain on the bedside table and smashed it to the floor. It burst into shards with a crash. A guard hurried in at once.
Your Highness?
Out.
The man bowed his head low, withdrew at once, and pulled the door shut behind him.
Damn it all. It was never supposed to be like this. His plan had not included killing father at all. With Wimbledon III's favor, he need only have guided the king's attention to Garcia's doings and had them stopped. And the piece in his hand for that was the first prince, Goron Wimbledon. Typheco had thought his plan flawless. With the promise of chief astrologer, he had lured Goron's own childhood tutor, Scholar Ang, a man of little, standing in the astrologers' guild, into writing the first prince a letter. And Goron had taken the hook at once. It matched Typheco's judgment. His brother was strong in battle, weak in thought, and would never meekly yield the throne. The letters that followed had fanned the first prince's ambition, step by step, while Typheco made his own preparations. When the final letter bearing the star prophecy was sent, he slipped back to the capital and revealed to father that Goron might march upon the palace. Once it proved true beyond doubt, father, in a towering rage, would have thrown Goron into a cell, imprisoned to the end of his days or exiled. Then father would have turned his gaze upon his other children. And Garcia, building her army on a grand scale, would surely have become the second nail in father's eye. But why did it turn out like this? When father heard the news, I whispered to him. He showed a strange, eerie smile, drew the short sword he kept on his person, and drove it straight into his own chest. It all happened too fast. Typheco had no time to stop it. He could only watch father die. He slid weakly down along the bedside, and for the first time felt the illusion that he too was a piece on someone's board. Father's final smile haunted him like a nightmare, chilling him to the bone. He had turned the whole affair over and over in his mind, even examined the corpse, and found not one thread of an answer. Why had father done it? He had even suspected the man might be an impostor in disguise. But no flaw could be found anywhere. Even the hidden old wound on the back matched his memory exactly.
With Goron about to reach the capital, he had no choice but to force down his panic and change the whole plan. Pin Wimbledon III's death upon the first prince, and use his own standing as second heir to take the throne ahead of time. So long as the coronation went smoothly, the limits of his domain would bind him no longer. He could directly summon the power of the Southern Duke to pressure Garcia and force her to abandon Clearwater Port.
Seen that way, the ending was hardly any worse. Yet Typhoeco felt a deep unease, as if an invisible hand had already, unnoticed by anyone, reached into Grey Castle's highest struggles, and he knew nothing of it. Now he had no choice but to grip the throne with all his might. Typhoeco Wimbledon swore in his heart, if he ever found out whose trickery this was, he would teach them what it meant to anger a king.
Release That Witch, Episode 47, Markets and Cycles. The week passed quietly enough in Bordertown. By Iron Axe's and Brian's account, the beast's strength and numbers would only grow as the months of demons wore on. While the pressure on the defense was still light, Roland sent another single-masted ship loaded with ore off to Willowtown. At the North Slope mine, with the prototype steam engine in service, the workforce had fallen by half, while output climbed steadily, already back to its level before the cave-in. With the machine doing the labor, manpower was greatly spared. At the same time, Roland made a first reform of the mine's pay system, from fixed wages to wages that floated with output. He had Barov work out the average daily yield of previous years and set that as the standard. Every increase beyond it earned an extra payment, and anyone who struck a gem vein got a special reward besides. The measure did wonders for the workers' zeal. The whole mine district bustled with energy.
With surplus ore in hand, Roland naturally wanted to put it to use. Besides adding steam engine number 2 to the production plan, he meant to build a batch of hand machine tools. The machine tool is an ancient thing. In plain terms, it is a workbench for shaping implements. So the anvil counts as the most primitive machine tool. Work held by hand, shaped by hand. Hand shaping was fine, hand holding was not. So people added clasps and grooves to the bench to hold the workpiece. The barrels of early matchlocks and flintlocks, for instance, were all hammered out by hand in grooved anvils. Later, when muscle power alone could no longer meet the need, machine tools branched apart. Different uses took different ways of holding the work and different cutting tools. Hand power linked with mechanism, curing the old flaw of pure handwork, where no two blows ever fell with the same force. What Roland had in mind was the hand milling machine. Milling machines have many uses, but his chief aim was to cut involute gears. So the frame could be simplified accordingly. A pair of clamps to fix the gear blank, and one rotatable steel grinding disc. A disc shaped specially for cutting gear teeth was easy to make with Anna's help. Grind the tool's tip to a trapezoid, heat it red hot, drag an iron bar across it to score the grooves, then quench it in water, and you had a custom disc of good hardness.
Once the key problem was solved, Roland summoned Carter at once and sent him to hire 2 carpenters to build the machine's base. Anna went on shaping the other metal parts in the castle's backyard.
With Anna around, metalworking had become as easy as molding clay, especially now that she had mastered the give and take of her flame. These days, the rough shaping of small parts was done by her 2 hands alone. Watching her melt an iron ingot into a sticky liquid and knead it back and forth, Roland could only marvel. Without witches, the plans in his head might have been delayed by a decade or more.
2 days later, the first simple milling machine stood in the backyard. Roland had not been idle in the meantime. Drawing gears was, you might say, his old trade. He had designed a whole gear train to regulate and steady the steam engine's output. The matching gear blanks were already molded, waiting only for the mill to be assembled before the teeth could be cut. Gears were nothing new, in truth. Most mines in this world drained their pits with wooden gears and winch gear pulled by livestock. This time, the chief knight finally felt content. After so many errands run for the prince, here at last was a scheme he could actually understand. Roland also had him bring 3 blacksmiths and their apprentices to learn the milling machines used together in the yard. He could hardly run these machines himself every day. A corps of skilled workers had to be trained. When everyone had bowed with stiff ceremony, Roland began demonstrating how to cut a gear on the mill. He did not mind playing the senior fitter in front of them all. This era, in truth, had princes of every sort, with every sort of hobby, and with his own old reputation for erratic behavior. Running a machine tool weighed on him not at all. The chief knight stood by to pour warm lard for him. In an age without machine oil, using lard as lubricant was somewhat wasteful, but better than nothing. The lard that dripped off the disc fell into a porcelain basin below and could be used again. Roland first scored the tooth marks on the blank at the designed angle, then set the blank upright and fixed it on the work table. Next, he drew the grinding disc over the blank, aligned it with the score lines, and stepped on the treadle. The treadle drove a wooden wheel, and a leather belt carried the power to the disc's spindle. Then, steadying the disc handle with his hand, he pulled gently down. The spinning disc bit slowly into the gear, blank, at a right angle. Since the blank was cast iron and the disc quenched steel, the cutting took little effort. The smell of lard filled the yard, and the smiths and apprentices, who had not tasted meat in a long time, swallowed in unison. The demonstration done, it was time to sign the contract. Bordertown's commerce was still in its infancy, and industry did not exist at all. Neither steam engines nor machine tools would be fought over by the town's shops the moment they appeared. In this era, most people could not see the enormous meaning these things carried, nor their latent value in trade. So Roland had to push the use of machinery himself. The contract stipulated a smithy using the mill must turn out at least 1 gear set per week. All materials would be provided by the castle. The processing fee was 10 silver dragons, and each week the smithy must pay 2 silver dragons as a machine usage fee. For the mill was not given to the smithy for free, it was more like a lease. Since the months of demons began, the smithy's business had fallen off considerably, so a chance to earn an order from the prince himself no less met with no objection. Roland also told them this was only the first mill. More would be built one after another, and anyone interested could apply at the town hall.
Your Highness, why not simply write the processing fee as 8 silver dragons on the contract?
The 2 numbers are the same, but what they mean is not. This is, after a fashion, Bordertown's very first commercial lease. I need to set an industry standard.
The chief knight rubbed his forehead. The 4th prince seemed to be spouting nonsense again, but by now he had experience with this. So long as he put on a look of rapt attention, His Highness would happily keep explaining.
A good beginning is what lets a virtuous cycle form. Right now, only I need gears. So I provide the machine, they provide the labor, and what they earn are hired wages. Later, when others come to need gears too, they will realize that buying the machine and producing themselves earns far more than wages ever will. In this way, facing something new, people can first dodge the risk by making goods on commission, while I earn returns through the lease, and how the new thing develops afterward is decided by the demands of the market. That is a virtuous cycle.
Release that witch. Episode 48, The Muster Horn. Roland was in fine spirits, warming up for a long lecture on how to build a sound market, when the drone of a horn came from afar. That horn, the call to General Assembly, was only sounded when the patrol could no longer cope. Roland and Carter exchanged a look, and both strode quickly out of the castle backyard. The guards already had horses waiting. He swung into the saddle, and with Carter and his men, rode hard for the wall. When the party mounted the wall, the militia were already at their posts, and a forest of spears stood bristling along the rampart. Roland felt a quiet satisfaction. All those eggs, it seemed, had not been wasted. He looked out to the northwest. At the edge of his vision, a mass of black shapes was closing on Bordertown. The prince made a rough count, about 20 of them. Iron Axe trotted over from his own defense position, saluted, and reported.
Your Highness, there is something odd about this pack of beasts.
Odd? You mean they do not usually move together?
Not exactly. If they were herd animals before their corruption, they keep that habit after wolf kinds, for instance. But this pack is not of one kind, and such beasts should not band together. Hunters even saw them fighting among themselves earlier.
Demonic beasts were, after all, mutated animals, and mostly kept the style of their former lives, only with a far stronger urge to kill. In a sense, they were duller than ordinary beasts. Their frenzy made them forget even the animal rule of seeking advantage and fleeing harm.
Roland watched carefully for a while. The individuals in the herd were indeed large and small. He could pick out wolf kinds and wild ox kinds at least. But that was no proof they had suddenly gained the wit to value sticking together, for they were still being guided, step by step, by the obstacles and traps Iron-Axe had laid, converging on the ground directly before the wall.
Vanner felt his palms grow wet and the spear shaft slippery where he gripped it. While no one was watching, he wiped the sweat furtively on his clothes. The hunter on observation kept repeating the same words.
Relax. Deep breaths.
Vanner had done it countless times, and still his heart would not stop racing. In more than 10 years living in the western region, what he had heard most were tales of the beast's ferocity. Since the months of demons began, watching the hunter company pick off stray beasts, one by one beneath the wall, had eased his fear. He had thought himself a battle-hardened brave by now. But today, facing so many monsters for the first time, his legs were trembling. Remembering that His Highness had picked him as deputy of the spear company, Vanner forced himself to look calm, and held his spear at the ready.
The monsters drew ever closer, close enough to make out their shapes. In the lead ran a wild ox kind. The two black battering horns on its head were each as thick as Vanner's arm, and the hair sprouting from its spine covered its whole body like a cloak. When it closed to 30 feet from the wall, Vanner fancied he could feel the very ground trembling. He licked his dry lips and waited for the hunter to give the thrust command. Then came a tremendous crash. The beast did not slow at all. It ran head first, dead straight, into the wall. Its skull burst apart on impact, and black blood spattered across the stonework. Vanner had no time even to sigh with relief. Two wolf kinds, close behind, sprang off the ox's back and leapt straight up.
Thrust.
The hunter's roar came at his ear, and Vanner thrust his spear out on reflex, though the wolves had not sprung toward him at all. The volley's effect fell far short of training. Along the rampart, the spears went out raggedly, one after another. Some men had thrust the moment they saw the wolves leap. Others had still not reacted long after the command was shouted. In the end, only one wolf kind was driven back. The other slipped through a gap in the spear forest and landed on top of the wall.
Hold to formation.
Vanner badly wanted to turn his head and see which way the beast would lunge, but the warning Iron-Axe had hammered into them in training did its work. The moment your attention is drawn to a noise behind you, the ground in front becomes the deadliest place of all. His eyes stayed fixed on the next wave of beasts now rushing in, and his grip tightened on his spear.
The hunter company was plainly far more seasoned than the spear company. Before the wolf kind even touched down, the hunters' scimitars were out of their sheaths. Iron-Axe, quickest of all, crossed 2 steps straight up to the beast, swung his musket butt upward, and smashed it into the creature's waist, sending it tumbling over and over in mid-air. A mutated beast's strength and hide were both greatly hardened. Such a blow plainly could not hurt it much. It landed, flipped over, and rose at once, bearing sharp fangs. A pity, then, that Iron-Axe's muzzle was already pressed against its forehead. A single shot. The beast's skull flew off entire. The brainless body staggered 2 steps back, twitched, and crumpled to the ground.
This animal is dead! The rest of you, hold your positions.
Ah, my belly.
Someone screamed. From the corner of his eye, Vanner saw a teammate sitting slumped against the parapet, clutching his belly tight, his hands already covered in blood.
His guts are spilling out. It was that wolf kind its claws got him when it leapt. Help me, please. Damn it, someone get a cloth and bind it.
The scene dissolved into chaos. Fortunately, the next few beasts to reach the wall were all boar kinds. Thick-skinned and tough-fleshed as they were, at such close range the hunters' crossbows soon turned them into pincushions.
Nobody panic. Have you all forgotten what we drilled for when a man is wounded? Follow the regulations.
Roland, whom Nightingale had held back until now, had finally arrived, and his shout rang high over the wall. His words snapped Vanna awake. He remembered his own duty. As deputy of this section's defense squad, when a man was wounded, organizing the rescue was his job.
You two, carry him to the medical house quickly. He named 2 of his teammates. By his own past experience, the wounded man had little chance of living, but His Highness had said it. Whether you act and whether you succeed are 2 different things. A militiaman's first duty is to carry out orders and regulations.
Once the casualty had been carried off, order returned to the wall at last. The wave had looked numerous, but only a handful of the beasts had truly threatened the men above. The hunter company shot down the rest, one by one, and Vanna finally let out a breath. The whole battle had lasted barely half an hour, yet he felt emptied of all strength.
God in heaven. What is that?
The hunter on watch in the tower cried out again. Vanna saw the target too. It was still a long way from the wall, but from its outline alone, the thing had to be a colossus. Vanna swore that even 10 oxen stacked together would not measure up to this monster. Only the experienced Iron Axe recognized what was coming. He drew in a sharp, cold breath. Beyond any doubt, this was a hybrid kind. They were in trouble. Release That Witch. Episode 49. The Hybrid. Roland rubbed his eyes. What in the world was this thing? If the beast's mutations still barely fell within the bounds of biology, this monster before him was as preposterous as something out of a horror film. From afar, it looked like a giant tortoise with 2 heads. Only as it came closer did he see that those were, in fact, 2 wolf heads.
Some Frankenstein's experiment? The giant beast stood about as tall as the wall itself, its body some 6 meters long, with 6 legs shaped like a rhinoceros's, short and thick. 1 foot alone matched a grown man's torso. And the heads. Those 2 wolf heads did not behave like the 2-headed monsters of the films, rearing up to roar in turn, or snapping at each other. They simply hung low, eyes dull and lifeless, as the thing crept forward like the Walking Dead.
Most striking of all was the carapace on its back. Its grey-brown surface was dull, crusted with algae, and looked formidably hard. Like a turtle's shell, it covered the beast from head to tail. If this monster could retract into its shell, as a turtle does, killing it would be no easy task.
But Roland was not worried. A beast this slow was a sitting target. Even if bullets could not pierce the shell, blowing apart the exposed wolf heads would do. And if it pulled its head in, then a charge of explosives would flip it belly up.
Your Highness, this is a hybrid kind. I think I understand now why beasts of different kinds are moving together. They must have been driven here by this hybrid.
The way a lion drives a flock of sheep. This one differs greatly from the hybrid you met last time.
This type is new to me as well. It may look clumsy, but you must not take it lightly. Any hybrid kind is hard to deal with.
It is about to enter range. Try bows first.
Light snow drifted from the sky, and a fickle northwest wind was blowing poor weather for archery. But the 2 hunters Iron Axe had picked out looked full of confidence. They climbed to the watchtower, judged the momentary wind, and loosed their arrows high into the air. The 2 arrows flew as if they had eyes. Reaching their peak, then falling under wind and gravity, they dropped at a near vertical angle onto the target's shell, and, just as expected, they bounced straight off. In Roland's mind, he could almost hear a ricochet notification chime. Unhurried, the 2 hunters knocked and drew again, and soon loosed 2 more volleys. The last salvo found its mark. The fall of arrows all clustered on the monster's front. One struck the wolf head dead on, and another stuck fast in its neck. Yet the beast neither roared in fury nor charged faster. It merely paused a moment, then drew its heads and feet into the shell and kept slowly pushing forward. The sight left everyone dumbstruck. The beast now looked like a tank with lowered suspension, the carapace's lower edge nearly scraping the ground as it advanced. Not even the finest archer could hope to slip an arrow into its body now.
Bring up the muskets.
The target was only 50 feet from the wall now. Even a smoothbore flintlock could hardly miss. Carter, Iron Axe and the others moved at once to the parapet, leveled their barrels along the rampart, took aim, and fired. Through the drifting white smoke, Roland could clearly see the chips kicked up where the bullets struck the shell. One small patch of carapace cracked and flaked away. The hybrid was utterly unmoved and kept its former pace.
So, the armor's strength still belonged to a carbon-based life form, he thought. But lead balls were too soft, deforming on impact, ill-suited to punching through thick armor. 4 muskets alone could never shatter that shell. It would have to be the explosives.
Iron Axe's judgment matched the prince's. He at once named the Spear Company's deputy and ordered him to fetch the explosives. By then, the beast had reached the wall itself. Finding it could advance no further, its carapace suddenly began to vibrate, hammering the wall again and again at a frequency like a jackhammer. Stone chips flew, and cracks raced outward along the cemented joints.
Rubble masonry stands up well to compression, but its resistance to tension and shear is dreadful. Which is to say, it can resist vibration not at all. Everyone on the wall felt the violent shaking. Soon a grating screech reached their ears. The hybrid's carapace had already sawed a breach into the wall's face, and still the pounding did not stop. It began to move again, embedding its whole front end into the wall.
The militiamen fled the crack-webbed section in a rush. Roland, meanwhile, was swept up around the waist by the invisible nightingale and jumped straight down from the wall had anyone been watching the prince just then. They would have seen him land with his feet dangling in the air, ghost-like. When Vanna arrived, gingerly clutching a charge of explosives, he stared in astonishment. A breach, nearly 9 feet wide, had been smashed through the middle of the wall. The beast, past the wall, had stopped its shaking and kept crawling forward at the same slow pace.
Quickly, light it and put it under that animal's feet.
Vanner's hands were shaking, but his mind was strangely clear. Every detail of handling the charge from training rose before his eyes. Unlike the test article, the production model carried less powder, sealed in a wooden case, with waste rock fragments packed between charge and boards. The ignition had been improved too, a pull-type fuse of flint and copper wire. And should that fail, a normal slow match remained at the tail of the charge.
Fumbling, he tore off the oil-soaked cloth wrapping the outside, hooked his finger around the exposed bend of copper wire, and pulled with all his strength. From inside the wooden box came a rapid fizzing, then a wisp of smoke, the sign of a successful ignition.
This salt-soaked fuse burned slowly, about 10 breaths. Vanner watched the white smoke puffing from the box, and the whole world around him seemed to fall silent. He had seen what this thing could do. If it went off in his hands, there would not be a piece of him left to bury.
9 breaths. Listening to his own pounding heart, counting down in silence, Vanner walked up to the beast, step by step, and set the charge down in its path. 5 breaths. The monster simply pressed onward over it. Nothing could halt its advance. 3 breaths. Vanner turned and ran. 2 breaths. 1 breath. A muffled boom. Vanner felt the ground jolt beneath his feet, and the world grew loud again. He twisted his head around and saw a white blast of air burst out from beneath the carapace, the snow thrown up by the explosion, blooming for all the world like a flower of mist. The beast finally stopped moving. As if it could no longer bear the weight it carried, the great shell crashed to the ground. Then black blood came flooding out from under the carapace's rim, soaking the ground all around.
Hoo-wah.
A cheer burst from the crowd. Vanner sat down hard on the ground. Only now did he realize that cold sweat had soaked his clothes through. It was over, at last. Just as everyone was thinking exactly that, the horn's high, shrill drone rang out across the borderland once more. Another wave of demonic beasts was rising over the horizon, surging toward this little border town. Release That Witch. Episode 50. The Wall of Flame.
Feeling better?
Anna patted Nanawa's back. Her own stomach was churning as well, but in the end, she forced it down. When the wounded man had been carried in, he was still conscious. "Save me," he kept repeating. "Save me." The despair, and pleading in his eyes were enough to break one's heart. And at the sight of the length of intestine hanging out of the man's belly, Nanawa had vomited on the spot. Even so, she insisted on finishing the treatment. Once Brian had helped push the intestine back into the man's abdomen, Nanawa stretched out her hands, closed her eyes, and healed the wound.
That was the first time I heard the horn blow. Is His Highness in trouble?
I don't know.
Anna shook her head. She badly wanted to go and see the wall, but feared she would only get in Roland's way. Right now, she rather envied Nightingale that ability to move without a sound or a trace was truly convenient. Just then, a muffled boom came from the direction of the wall, and everyone felt the faint tremor beneath their feet. Brian stood up, pacing restlessly about the room.
Relax, lad. Losing your calm before you've even reached the battlefield only makes a bad outcome worse, and we're still a long way from bad.
I'm sorry, my lord. It's just knowing that men are fighting for their lives on the wall while I sit here wasting time, I can't rest easy. Guarding this town was supposed to be my duty.
Perhaps, but guarding the town is not your duty alone. I hear His Highness means to knight you once winter is over, so you should understand that a knight's first principle is loyalty. Since he needs you to protect Anna, you do your duty.
You're right, sir.
Brian hesitated a moment, then sat back down. But soon they heard the horn's second-long blast, more urgent than the first, rolling through every heart like thunder. Baron Pine frowned.
Anna.
He turned his head. The witch was already walking straight for the door. Brian chased after her at once and planted himself in front of her.
Didn't you say you wanted to guard the wall? Now is the time. As long as you go with me, you won't be disobeying His Highness's order.
Brian froze on the spot. He raised his head and looked toward Baron Pine.
What a remarkable girl, the Baron thought. At the very least, there was no fault to find in that argument. His Highness had never ordered her to stay inside the medical academy. And according to Nanawa, she could summon flame. If the situation truly was desperate, one more witch might just turn the tide of battle.
Protect her.
Yes, sir.
Father, aren't you going?
My battlefield is right here, my dear girl. Be it demonic beasts or devils, I won't let any of them lay a finger on you.
The medical academy stood not far from the wall. Anna and Brian jogged east along the stone road at its foot, and when they reached the central watchtower, they saw that things had already gone very wrong. A huge breach had been torn open in the wall. Roland's personal guards were holding shields against the gap, but several had already been knocked to the ground. Worst of all was a long-tusked beast shaped like a wild boar. Nothing could stand against its charge. The guards at the front were flung aside, shields and all.
Hey, it's dangerous here. Get away from the breach.
Anna did not hear a word of it. She walked straight toward the breach. The beast burst out of the crowd, wheeled around, and charged directly at her. Brian darted in from the side, dropped low, and swung his sword in a flat cut. The maddened beast made no attempt to dodge. Its forelegs struck the blade, knocking the sword flying, and the force of its own charge snapped the bone of the gashed leg. It toppled sideways, shrieking, thrashing like a fish out of water. For a moment, no one dared approach. Anna walked up beside it and pressed both hands to the ground. Flame burst out from beneath the beast, and in moments, it was roasted to a husk of charcoal. Roland, too, noticed the sudden bloom of fire. When he realized it was Anna who had joined the fight herself, he broke out in a cold sweat. This was not in his plan.
He had meant for Nanawa to win the militia's goodwill first, and only reveal Anna once most of them had accepted witches. But it was too late for any of that now. Forget about me. Go protect her.
Anna must not come to harm. She was the living replacement for a key industrial process. If she were hurt, the loss would be beyond measure.
Understood. Please, Your Highness, you take care as well.
Anna walked to the breach in the wall. Most of Roland's guards had seen the strangely dressed girl before, and they made way for her. Standing within the shield wall, she stretched her arms out flat to either side. Flame poured from her palms like vines, climbing upward along the broken faces of the wall. Everyone who witnessed the sight stood with mouths agape. They could not believe their eyes. A wall of flame was slowly rising, filling the gap in the rampart. This was no illusion. The heat drove the guards at the breach back several paces, and the snow nearby melted swiftly, rising in billowing white mist. The demonic beasts felt the firewall's searing heat as well. They scattered and fled to either side. Now and then one would charge headlong into the flames only to perish in the sea of fire within a few steps.
Everyone, to the wall! Spear company, reform your ranks. Hunters fire at will.
With that, he snatched Carter's musket, climbed to the top of the wall, and fired at the cornered beasts with his own hands. The prince's action fired the blood of everyone present. In this age, tales of nobles or royalty leading from the front were few and far between. That Roland, the kingdom's fourth prince, would stand and fight alongside a militia drawn from commoners, the lift it gave to morale was immense.
Defend Bordertown. Fight for Prince Roland.
Voices rose together in a single cry, and they held the defensive line as if the wall had never been breached. The battle raged on until the sky grew dark. At last, no living demonic beast remained before the wall. The firelight slowly faded. Anna wiped the sweat from her brow and walked out of the breach. Then Roland witnessed an incredible sight. The guards struck their fists to their chests and bowed their heads to her. Then the militiamen followed, as if infected. No one shouted the words demon or witch. They simply watched her in silence, and for a brief moment, peace settled over the battlefield at the border. A power never before seen was indeed frightening. But when that power stood on your own side, fighting the same evil enemy, fear slowly faded away, replaced by trust and gratitude. Roland, pressing down the excitement surging in his heart, walked up to Anna, only to find her face pale, her steps faltering, her body swaying on the verge of collapse.
Are you all right?
He gripped the girl's shoulders anxiously. She managed a weak smile for the prince, and then toppled forward into his arms.